Hello there, I'm a nerd named Ryan, and today I'm going to talk to you about one of my favourite classic Doctor Who stories. Today we are looking at Horror of Fang Rock. So let's talk about it. Okay, so Horror of Fang Rock. Now this is a classic Tom Baker story, written by Terrance Dicks, so you know you're in for a good time when Terrance Dicks writes it. And it's directed by Paddy Russell, and it's the first story produced by Graham Williams. You've got Tom Baker as the Fourth Doctor and Louise Jameson as Leela. Now, even though this is the first story produced by Graham Williams, there's still a lot of the gothic horror elements from the Philip Hinchcliffe era left over. This is actually one of the best gothic stories Doctor Who has ever done. I'm actually recording this video on the last day of June, but despite that, this is a very kind of Halloween story. This is a story I do watch a lot in October, actually. So if, once we get to Halloween, if you want to watch some classic Doctor Who, Horror of Fang Rock's a pretty good option there, because, like I say, it's a really good, really creepy Doctor Who. This is one of the creepiest classic Doctor Who's for me. I just love this story. So let's talk a little bit about the story. We start off with a mysterious light in the sky, which crashes into the sea near a lighthouse. This lighthouse has 3 people working on it, and they've just recently gotten an electric generator, which one of the lighthouse workers, an older gentleman, he's not very happy about the electricity. He's like, you should have stuck with the old oil lamps for the lighthouse. Anyway, the Doctor and Leela land by complete accident. They just they were going somewhere else and they just land there by mistake. But, they land on the lighthouse and they go, let's go have a look. And good thing they do, because just as they get there, one of the crew members has been killed, and a mysterious fog is creeping in across the lighthouse. A fog that wasn't there a moment ago. It was a clear sky, and now all of a sudden there's this very thick, very mysterious fog. Things are only complicated when a ship crashes and a few survivors from this shipwreck are brought on board the lighthouse, only to discover that things are not quite as they seem. There's a mysterious green light killing off various crew members, various people in this lighthouse, one by one. Now that is a great setup. I am a real sucker for base under siege stories and horror stories and gothic horror stories, and this provides us with both here. Terrance Dicks writes a brilliant script. This is one of Terrance Dicks' best scripts for Doctor Who, and Terrance Dicks was always pretty solid for Doctor Who. Like, the second you see his name pop up in the opening credits, you're like, yeah, this is going to be good. This is going to be a good one. We got Terrance Dicks writing this one. It's going to be a good time, and it is. So for me, I really like when Doctor Who goes sort of full-on horror. Like, as much as Doctor Who is a science fiction show, I've always thought of it as much as a horror show as it is sci-fi. And this is very much a horror story. This is not very science fiction-y, other than, there's an alien in it. But it's more sort of using the sci-fi trope of aliens to tell a very suspenseful, almost supernatural gothic horror story, and I think that's really, really well done. I think that's achieved perfectly. One, with Terrance Dicks' script, that premise of, just have a few characters in an isolated location which they cannot escape from, and have them all get picked off one by one while the Doctor and Leela are trying to kind of solve this mystery. That's a really excellent premise. That's a really excellent setup for the story, and it leads to a lot of really cool and a lot of really creepy moments. This story builds an atmosphere brilliantly. The gothic atmosphere of this is just wonderful. As I say, I'm recording this in June, but this is honestly one to watch for October. This is a very Halloween-esque Doctor Who story, and I think it works brilliantly. I like all of the cast in this. Not necessarily all of the characters. One of the survivors of the shipwreck is a female. I think she's like a secretary or something, but she's very much a very cliched character of scream and faint and be a bit hysterical, which, I don't mind it in this case, because you've got Leela as kind of a nice counterpoint to that. I love Leela in this story. She is amazing. Like, Leela's one of my favourite companions from Classic Who. She might be my favourite Tom Baker era companion. It's between her and Sarah Jane. I've always kind of thought of Sarah Jane as being more kind of a mix companion, like she did some with, John Pertwee, some with Baker, some with Tennant, and of course that one episode with Matt Smith of the Sarah Jane Adventures. So, she's, in her own league, but I always really liked Leela as a character, and I think this is easily her best story. I think Louise Jameson plays her brilliantly. She and Tom Baker play off each other. Their dynamic is wonderful. Tom Baker is on top form here. There are bits where he gets... there are bits where he can be very goofy and bits where he can be very kind of eccentric, like the Fourth Doctor is, but there are also a couple of bits where kind of he realises the danger and he properly kind of yells at the survivors and really sort of asserts his authority, and he can be pretty scary and pretty intimidating in those moments. But it's a great performance. Absolutely some of Tom Baker's best work, absolutely some of Louise Jameson's best work. They work brilliantly here as they're kind of trying to sort out this mystery and solve this mystery and find out what's doing all this, while also trying to keep this, all the survivors safe. Not only the lighthouse crew, but the survivors of the shipwreck, who again all have really nice little character moments and nice little character motivations. Even the more cliched character, I think they all do really, really well. I think all the actors do particularly well. And yeah, it's just a really great story for building a really tense and really creepy atmosphere. I like that they kind of don't show the monster straight away. They don't show the monster until right at the end. And, when they do show the monster, it's very classic Doctor Who with the wonky special effects, which, isn't great. But I kind of like that. I think that adds to the charm of classic Who myself. But for the first kind of 3 episodes, they don't really show... It's a 4-parter, this is a 4-part story. And for the first 3 parts, they don't show the monster. All they show is this kind of eerie green light and the monster's point of view shot. And that's really, really effective in, again, adding to this kind of creepy atmosphere. It's if you like atmospheric horror, this is really the Doctor Who story to watch. Because it's just great at that. It's very eerie, it's very chilling. And again, even though it's not a Philip Hinchcliffe story, it has a lot of that same kind of style of the Philip Hinchcliffe era, with the gothic horror and with the creepy atmosphere and with the kind of very dark moments. Like this monster does not mess around. It gets itself a body count. It very much is. Yeah, it's very vicious, and you don't really see any graphic violence, but there's one character who's killed very early on, and while you don't see his body, the way his body is described by the other characters and the way the other characters react to seeing it lets you know that this is a very visceral, nasty death that this character's had. They talk about how this character's been ripped apart, so that whatever's done it has ripped it apart to see how humans work, and that's such a creepy idea, and I love that. That's so good. In case you couldn't tell, I adore this story. Again, props to Paddy Russell, the director of this, who she really did a great job here in again sort of giving the story that great gothic atmosphere, that feeling of isolation, that claustrophobic feel as well, because it's all in one location. And not only is it all in one location, it's in a lighthouse. Lighthouses are very small rooms. So everywhere feels very closed in. When they're on the stairs, the staircase is narrow and, goes round, because it's a lighthouse. Everywhere feels very closed in and very claustrophobic. And I think that really just, again, that's a great trope in horror, and it really adds to the scariness of this. One other thing that I really like in this story as well is that even though it is, again, very dark and very gothic and very creepy, Terrance Dicks uses humour in this just right. Doctor Who has always had a great sense of humour to it, particularly with the Doctor themselves. Tom Baker's Doctor is especially funny, and while they don't overuse the humour in this story, when they do use comedy, when Dicks does insert bits of comedy into the script, it's really well placed, because it kind of just eases the tension just enough. You have a little bit of a laugh, and then it goes back to being creepy. That's great. The Doctor's got some great lines in this. There's a great little back and forth where the Doctor kind of figures out what Leela and this other character are telling him, and he's like, why am I standing here wasting my time? Why didn't you tell me this? And like, I did tell you, and it's a nice little back and forth, a nice little funny bit. That's great. There's a bit where Leela just flat out threatens one of the characters, says, do what the Doctor says or I will cut out your heart, because Leela, of course, is a savage. I love that. That's great. And we cut to the Doctor just with sort of a big grin on his face. I love that. That's a great little moment. That's a great moment for Leela. There's a bit where the other female character, who again is a little bit more cliched, she hears some news and just immediately faints, and we just immediately cut to Leela, who's just rolling her eyes like, oh, we don't have time for this. So the little bits of humour, when humour is used, it's used sparingly and it's used effectively and it's used well. It's never overused, it never undermines the tension or the seriousness of the story, and it's masterfully done. I think this is one of Terrance Dicks's strongest scripts for Doctor Who, and Terrance Dicks was always pretty reliable. Like, I think even his weaker Doctor Who stories are at the very least interesting. So to have him write a really great, very Halloween feeling, very gothic horror story with Tom Baker and with Leela, with the Fourth Doctor and with Leela, one of the best Doctor companion duos in my opinion, and to have it all in one location and have it be so focused on building up that creepy atmosphere as well as that really tense mystery. Oh, you can't beat it. You cannot beat it. It's one of my absolute favourite Doctor Who stories. I love this one. If you're getting into Classic Who, if you're not really that familiar with the classic series and you're wondering where to start, this is a really good sort of one to get you into Classic Who, because again, it's very minimalist, the setup is very simple, the premise is very simple, the characters are all at the very least compelling. You've got a great Doctor and companion duo. You've got one of the best writers Doctor Who ever had doing the script. And it's just a really well done, really creepy, really eerie Doctor Who story. So yeah, for new viewers, for people who are just getting into Classic Who, this is a really good one. I would recommend it. And also for people who, love Classic Who and love classic horror, it's a great story for those guys as well. So, Horror of Fang Rock, one of my absolute favourite Fourth Doctor stories, one of my favourite classic Doctor Who stories in general, a really solid, really excellent piece of horror, sort of atmospheric Doctor Who horror. Yeah, I just love it. But what do you think about it? Let me know any general thoughts you have about this story in the comments below. Thanks so much for stopping by, and I'll see you when I see you. Bye-bye.